Professor Massimo Buonomo. It is my distinct honor to introduce our esteemed speaker, Professor Massimo Buonomo, a highly regarded professional in the fields of artificial intelligence and blockchain. Professor Buonomo has served as a global expert in artificial intelligence, metaverse, and blockchain for the United Nations, demonstrating his profound expertise and global recognition. In addition to his work with the United Nations, Professor Buonomo is an international AI expert specializing in ethics in autonomous and artificial intelligence applications at the International Electrotechnical Commission, a specialized think tank on ethics in AI. His insights and contributions to this field have been instrumental in shaping ethical guidelines and practices in AI. Professor Buonomo's experience extends beyond academia and research. He is a trust board advisor and consultant for international organizations, startups, central banks, and corporates, leveraging his extensive knowledge to guide strategic decision-making process. Before embarking on his journey in academia, Professor Buonomo spent 20 years working in international finance markets, gaining invaluable experience and insights. Following this, he served as an international finance university professor in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Turin, Italy, and Wuhan, China, sharing his knowledge and expertise with the next generation of leaders in the field. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Professor Massimo Buonomo.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Very kind of you. And today we're going to talk about an issue that is quite relevant these days because we are going to talk about legislation in AI and also a particular aspect about ethics in AI and the dangers of AI. So what we're going to focus on is all these aspects combined. This is myself. I'm a former United Nations global expert in the field of AI and human rights, and we're going to talk specifically on these issues. Now, we want to have an overview of what happened in the area of AI in terms of legislations all around the world. So we're going to just give a hint about AI in respect to legislation in the US, and then we're gonna go into details about the European Union. So as we know, in October 2022, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy published a blueprint on AI of Bill of Rights. That is quite important because this bill just addressed the issue of AI in details, but at the same time gave an overview of what's going to happen in the United States, which is the most dynamic country in terms of AI. Some issues are quite relevant. First of all, this is a non-binding roadmap. Non-binding means that it's not a mandatory roadmap, although it gives some hints that are going to be followed by all the companies in the United States in the area of AI for the responsible use of AI. I stress these words responsible because since the outset, AI comes from far away, but in the last year and a half, it has had an acceleration, and sometimes we have got some doubts, and we're going to talk about that, about the responsible use of AI. First of all, in the AI Bill of Rights, there are 5 core principles to guide and govern the effective development and implementation of AI. The point quite relevant to mention is that there is an exclusion of law enforcement actions, which means that basically these are just some suggestions, but if an AI company in the US doesn't follow these suggestions, there is no punishment for that. Now, there are 5 main principles, which are safe and effective systems, then algorithmic discrimination protections, data privacy, notice and explanation, and human alternatives, consideration, and fallbacks. That means that basically all these issues are going to be addressed according to these principles. Now, because what we talk about today is more on the European side, because this is the first official law approved by the European Parliament, we're going to switch immediately to that side. I wanted to mention this point in the US about no law enforcement. That means basically that there is excluding law enforcement of those principles that we mentioned before. And that the danger of this approach, different from the European Union, is that this exclusion may continue to the over surveillance of certain populations, communities, and individuals under the guise of public safety and national security. And that will not necessarily reduce the history and manifestation of rampant discrimination against people of color and immigrants. That is one of the main dangers of the use of AI. And that was the main criticism in the US, because if law enforcement were included in the blueprint provisions and guidance, the protection for individuals left with little recourse when misidentified and scrutinized by existing emerging AI technologies would have been much stronger. And this is an issue that we're going to see also in the European Union legislation. And in fact, when we talk about EU Artificial Intelligence Act, we are talking the first legislative act of this kind in the world. This is the first in the world. That's why it's so important, because it's going to be used all around the world as a global standard for AI regulation in other jurisdictions, in other countries in the world, just as GDPR has done the same in the past. What are the main features of the Artificial Intelligence Act in Europe? First of all, there is a specific approach, which is a risk-based approach, which means the higher the risk, the stricter the rules. This is a flexible approach. That means that basically we're not going to over-regulate the whole area of AI, but we're going to regulate specifically those areas that have a higher risk. And that's why the AI Act focuses on high-impact general-purpose AI models, because they can cause systemic risk in the future, as well as on high-risk AI systems. So two ways: one on the general purposes AI models, and then on high-risk AI systems. Now, there is a uniform horizontal legal framework for AI that aims to ensure legal certainty. It's not fragmented approach, but is horizontal, that ensures legal certainty. And there is a revised system of governance with some enforcement powers at EU level. That's the difference with the US. There is the provision for law enforcement powers at EU level. Now, AI systems that are placed on EU market are used basically in the European Union because they are safe and respect existing law on fundamental rights and values. So there is a stress on fundamental rights, human rights, that is to be followed by EU AI systems. Now, where does the AI Act does not apply? The Council's text definition of AI is in line with the approach which is being proposed by OECD. And the regulation in the European Union does not apply to areas outside the scope of EU law, and therefore should not, in any case, affect member states' competencies in national security. That is an important issue, because when we talk about national security, AI Act does not apply. So there is, as we said, the exclusion of national security, defense, military purposes from the scope of AI. And also, there are some other areas not related to national security that where AI Act is not applied. Basically, AI Act should not apply to systems and their outputs that are used for the sole purpose of research and development. So if we are a university, for instance, and we do not have a commercial project related to AI, the AI Act is not applied. Also for people, senior people that have are using AI for non-professional purposes. Like, for instance, myself, if I work if I do not work using AI, but I use it for my pleasure, so the AI Act does not apply to myself. There is also an exception for transparency obligations. Now, what are the main features of the Act? First of all, there is an extension of the list of prohibitions, but there is this is a very important issue and we're going to address later on in my presentation. There is a possibility of use remote biometric identification by law enforcement authorities in public spaces subject to safeguards. What does that mean? That remote biometric identification can be used only by police, law enforcement authorities in public spaces, but also if they respect specific safeguards. So the display and also deployers of high-risk AI systems to conduct a fundamental rights impact assessment prior to putting an AI system into use. What does that mean? That there must be a fundamental rights assessment before using AI for high-risk AI systems, even if it's used by law enforcement authorities. So generally speaking, there are two main approaches here. If there is a limited risk, as we said, high risk, higher obligations. Limited risk, AI systems will be subject to light transparency obligations. Those AI systems must disclose that the content was AI generated so that users can make informed decisions in further use. If I use, for instance, I'm using a chatbot with a company or just for informative reasons, I have to know that this is a AI-generated chatbot. It's not that I interact with somebody and that I don't even know that it's an AI-generated chatbot. While high-risk AI systems must be authorized. What does that mean? That means that they are subject to a set of requirements and obligations to gain access to the EU market. I cannot just produce a high-risk AI system and come to Europe and use it. I have to respect the requirements, otherwise I will be banned in Europe. So there must be technically feasible and less burdensome requirements for stakeholders to comply with, exactly referring to the quality of data, and also technical documentation that should be drawn up by SMEs to demonstrate that their high-risk AI systems comply with the requirements. If it's a small size enterprise, of course, they have lower requirements compared with big companies, and they have to show where the data come from and also technical documentation that is being used. But also, we have, they are to some extent lighter requirements. Then there are the so-called unacceptable AI systems. Those systems are banned from the EU. We cannot use them. And which ones are they? First of all, cognitive behavioral manipulation. I manipulate, and we're going to see it later in my presentation. I manipulate the behavior of the person that I'm interacting with. Also, untargeted scrapping of facial images from the internet or CCTV footage. Facial recognition, we have a specific section on that because this is a very important system that can be used in some cases only by law enforcement authorities. Also, emotion recognition in the workplace and educational systems in the schools, universities, at work, there cannot be emotion recognition. And we're going to see what that means. Social scoring also is prohibited. Biometric categorization to infer sensitive data, such as sexual orientation or religious belief. There cannot be AI systems that, from what I'm giving to as in terms of information, it can infer my sexual orientation or religious belief. And also some predictive policies for individuals. As we said, there are also emergency procedure introduced allow law enforcement authorities to deploy a high-risk AI tool that has not passed the conformity assessment procedure in case of urgency. So what the private actor cannot do, the public actor can do in case of urgency, which means that the law enforcement authorities can use a high-risk AI tool that has not even passed the conformity assessment procedure if there is an urgency, a national urgency. Also, a specific mechanism has been introduced to ensure that fundamental rights will be sufficiently protected against any potential misuse of AI systems. There is also a specific focus on fundamental rights, human rights. AI systems cannot break human rights. So what are the tasks for the Commission, the European Commission? There's a specific AI office within the European Commission. It's been created, and the task is to oversee those more advanced AI models. They contribute to fostering standards and testing practices and enforce the common rules in all member states. Because every member state in Europe does have different standards and practices, testing practices. So there must be uniformity of these rules, and the AI office in the Commission does just that. And also there's a panel, a scientific panel of independent experts like myself, which advise the AI office about the GPAI models. So those models, general AI models. Then there is also the AI board. What is it? What does it do? It contributes to the development of methodologies for evaluating the capabilities of foundational models. What does that mean? It means that there are some methodologies that are the basis of these models, foundational models. And those methodologies determine the output of the AI, and that's why the AI board intervenes just to contribute to this development of methodologies. Also, the AI board advises the designation and the emergence of high-impact foundation models. It intervenes before those models come to the market because they must be the company that wants to use those models must send them to the AI bot to analyze and say whether that is follows the rules or not. And that's also the monitoring of possible safety risks related to foundation models. So you can see that the AI bot has an active role, intervenes actively to regulate it before the model comes to the market. And also we comprise model member states representatives, and they're always a coordination platform and advisory body to the Commission. And then we said the advisory forum for AI board, because the AI board is made up of officers of the European Commission, but the advisory board forum is made up of stakeholders such as industry representatives, SMEs, startups, civil society, academia, and they will all participate to provide technical expertise to the AI board. So experts like myself can participate and give an input, as also I do it with startups, international organizations, or governments. They ask me about how and what is the impact of this high risk model is, and I myself give advice just to give some tips and not to push to the market some projects or models that may be wrong and may be excluded by the European Union. There is also a complaints tool that a natural or legal person can raise. So if I myself as a person want to make a complaint about the relevant market surveillance authority concerning non-compliance with the AI Act, I can do it. So if I feel that the AI Act, the AI system is violating AI rules, I can make a complaint to the European body. And I can even expect that such complaint will be handled in line with dedicated procedures of that authorities. So that means that I have a protection and I have a serious tool that can give obstacles to the implementation of a high-risk AI system if it violates the EU rules. So there is a fundamental rights impact assessment. What does that mean? If I have a company that is producing an AI, high-risk AI system before this high-risk AI system is put in the market by this company, by the deployer, there must be this impact assessment to evaluate whether it follows the EU rules or not. Public entities also will be obliged to register in the EU database for high-risk AI systems. So it's not only the private companies, but also public entities must register in this database. And the users of emotional recognition systems have to inform natural persons when they are being exposed to such a system. You can't use the facial recognition system or an emotional recognition system without telling me about it. Also, there is an exception, as we said before, for the law enforcement authorities. So anybody except the law enforcement authorities cannot use these emotional recognition systems. This is a technology that analyzes the facial expression, we're going to see it, from both a static image and also from videos in order to reveal information on one's emotional state. If there's a camera that is facing me and sees that I'm sweating, for instance, is recording my emotional state, and that's forbidden. So one problem about the AI Act is that it comes into force 2 years after it's been approved, which means in just last month. And there are some exceptions for specific provisions, but generally speaking, 2 years after, you start wondering if it should come right away into force in European Union. But that's one of the problems with AI. It goes at an unbelievable speed, while the legislators are a little bit slower than that. Now, there's a problem of transparency for the affected person. Why? Because certain users of high-risk AI systems that are public entities are also, as we said, obliged to register in the EU database for high-risk AI system. An obligation for users of emotion recognition system to inform the natural person that they are exposed to such a system. And we're going to see a case in the United States where that is not that obligation does not apply, because as we said, in the US there is a different those guidelines that we said before are just guidelines, while here there are enforcement provisions. So as we said, a natural person can make a complaint, and a complaint might be handled in line with the procedures of the EU authority. Now, what are the GPAI systems, general purpose AI system? Because there is a difference between specific AI system and general purpose AI system. The EU text clearly defines those ones. Those are systems, AI systems, that can be used for many different purposes, not just one purpose. This is a specialized AI system, but for many purposes. And then where this general purpose AI technology is subsequently integrated into another high-risk system. So that means that, for instance, many general purpose AI systems like ChatGPT is used as a base for specific AI systems that some other companies, AI companies use. For instance, ChatGPT or GPT-4 that has more advanced AI system as a source for the data, to refine those data through the fine-tuning process for their specific AI system. So as we see, the general purpose AI system is used either directly by me and myself as a natural person, or by some companies that are in the middle to give me some specific AI services. Now, technological developments like the rise, as we said, of ChatGPT played a role in disrupting the AI Act discussions, because it was not covered by the original proposal. And that was why there was an adaptation of the AI Act to the new developments. And that's why there's this concern of 2 years before the AI Act come into force. And maybe in these 2 years, some other AI, general purpose AI systems, I'm sure they will be developed, and maybe the AI Act will be already old when it comes into force. That's why there was a request in the European Parliament for stricter risk regulations. So these general purpose AI systems would have to support their compliance effort by providing non-commercially sensitive information. So there are some certain requirements for high-risk AI systems that apply to general purpose AI systems in such cases. That means that the categorization of a high-risk AI system includes some applications of general purpose AI systems. However, instead of direct applications of these requirements, an implementation act would specify how they would be applied in relation to general purposes AI systems based on consultation and detailed impact assessment and considering specific characteristics of these systems and related value chain, technical feasibility, and market and technological developments. That means that when we come to the market as a company to use a general purpose AI system, we have to do in Europe, in a consultation, a detailed impact assessment that's necessary before going to the market. And that's why the AI companies consult specialist advisors for that, because otherwise they would fail into the European market. So that is a necessity for the companies. Now we come to some specific cases that are related to what we just said. Biometrics, identification, and authentication. Biometrics are used to identify and authenticate a person using a set of recognizable and verifiable data unique and specific to that person. So in biometrics, there are two main issues: identification and authentication. Identification answers the question, who are you? Authentication answers another question, are you really who you are, you say you are? So you can say that you are somebody. I say I am Massimo Buonomo, and then if I'm identifying, but I have not passed the authentication question because I have to prove that I'm Massimo Buonomo. And that's the biometrics identification process, as you can see. First, there is a capturing of the face, then the extraction of the face into the system, the comparison of the face with the other faces, and then the matching. And that's the identification first, authentication after. And then there is the issue of facial recognition. Facial recognition is the process of identifying and verifying the identity of a person using their face, just what we said. It captures, analyzes, and compares patterns based on the person's facial details. The face detection process is an essential step in detecting and locating human faces in images and videos. In the case of facial biometrics, a 2D or 3D sensor captures, as we said before, captures the face, 2D or 3D, and then transforms that into digital data by applying an algorithm before comparing to images captured to those held in the database. It's just exactly what we said here. These automated systems can be used to identify or check an individual's identity in just a few seconds based on facial features, geometry, spacing of the eyes, bridge of the nose, the contour of the lips, ears, chin. They can even do it in the middle of a crowd and with dynamic and unstable environments. And we're going to see it. Look at that. Just with this system, they scan who this guy is, who the other guy is, and the other guy is immediately. We are being spied. So why face recognition then? Because facial biometrics continues to be the preferred biometric benchmark. That's because it's easy to deploy and implement. There's no physical interaction with the end user. Just do it while I'm in the crowd. And facial detection and face match processes for verification identities are quick, immediately. Through this photo, they know who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing. You can see it immediately. But the use of real-time remote biometric identification systems in publicly accessible spaces is allowed in Europe. only where such use is strictly necessary for law enforcement purposes and for which law enforcement authorities should therefore be exceptionally allowed to use such systems. They cannot do it just because they say, oh, it's an emergency. They have to prove it. In the case of victims of certain crimes, prevention of genuine, present, and even foreseeable threats, such as terrorist attacks, and search for people suspected of the most serious crimes. So it's strictly regulated, but it's allowed. And then US. Let's see the facial recognition system used and allowed in the US. The Madison Square Garden Entertainment, the owner of the Madison Square Garden, the arena, has put lawyers who represent people suing it on an exclusion list to keep them out of concerts and sporting events. So a private authorities is doing that. Madison Square Garden's use of facial recognition to enforce an enemy list in brackets caused a legal battle and growing scrutiny of the deployment and technology itself. So if I'm a lawyer that is defending an employee who's been fired by the Madison Square Garden, I go with my wife to the Madison, they look at me with the scan and they say, you cannot get in. And that is not allowed in Europe, but is allowed in the US. Attorneys barred from the Madison Square Garden and other ventures owned by the same parent company are arguing that a law against theaters refusing entries to critics also precludes the ban against them. So the New York State Representative Tony Simone says that he was even a New York State representative, said he was disinvited from an event by the Madison Square Garden as well, after criticizing the hospitality group's use of face recognition. He was disinvited, just kicked out. The facial recognition deployment could harm free speech and non-discrimination rights. And then there is social scoring. That's what you see in this photo. Each of us has a vote, like just at school. This woman has 2.5, the other one is 4.5, the other one is 1.8. We are all being scored. This is prohibited in Europe. It's a system evaluates citizens' behavior through online and offline parameters, assigning a score based on individual actions. But that's used in China. So the social scoring defines risk profiles of individuals based on control of their behavior, such as criminal or financial activities, and then penalizes low-scoring citizens by denying them access to essential public services. If I get 4 in my social scoring, I cannot even go to the doctor in some cases. The Council's text extends to private actors. The prohibition of using AI for social scoring in Europe, and the prohibition of the use of AI systems that exploit the vulnerability of persons that who are vulnerable due to their social or economic situation. If I can't pay the rent because I'm unemployed, I get a low score and I cannot go to the doctor. That's crazy, but that's what social scores does. So the Article 17 of the AI Act states that AI systems providing public or private social scoring may violate the right to dignity and non-discrimination and the values of equality and justice. The basic idea behind the nationwide social credit system is that everything from people's ability to use public transportation, even if I want to go to take a bus, if I have a low score, I cannot get a bus. To future jobs they can receive is based on single score. In doing so, the score becomes an entire basis for a person's social standing. So social scores is even worse than facial recognition because I get a score and for all my life, unless I improve my score, I'm always banned by public authorities, and even in some cases, private authorities, if I apply for a job. So Italy became the first European country to implement a social credit system that is government-sponsored the program was applied in Bologna, and citizens will be given rewards in form of cryptocurrency if they use public transportation and recycling things in the right way. So the citizens have a wallet, and they get some rewards in the wallet because of this social credit score. And then there is this case of Louisiana, the facial recognition. Louisiana authorities' use of facial recognition technology led to a mistaken identity arrest of a Georgian man on a fugitive warrant. Randall Reid, 28 years old, was jailed in late November in Georgia. Authorities erroneously linked Reid to pursue thefts in Jefferson Parish and Baton Rouge. Reid was even arrested on November 25 and released in December 1st. Reid had never been to Louisiana a day in his life. Another case I want to show you, this case is this one. This guy, Nigel Parks. The first photo is the facial recognition. The second photo is his own photo. This guy, the second one, was arrested based solely on these photos, matching his photo with the facial recognition of the robber, the first one. There was no additional evidence. Then he was released, but this guy spent time in prison just because of this photo. This is crazy. In New Jersey, US. So the last words are on general AI ethical issues. What are the questions we must ask? Might AI algorithms infringe fundamental human rights, from privacy and data confidentiality to freedom of choice? How can we ensure that social and cultural stereotypes are not implemented in AI when it comes to gender discrimination? How can we ensure accountability when decisions and actions are fully automated? How do we ensure that AI is developed in a transparent way? Also, image generators can create, as we saw before, lifelike images, which raise concerns about artistic integrity and abuse. AI has been accused of propagating human biases, namely because of AI technologies are trained using data coming from humans. And also, the phenomenon of AI hallucinations, as you can see, hallucinations and measures to implement strict safeguards to prevent such errors. What is hallucination? It's a situation where a system, particularly an AI system or machine learning system, generates and perceives something that is not based on actual data or reality. In the context of AI hallucinations, AI hallucination can occur when a machine learning model generates information that is entirely fabricated and not supported by input data. They just go crazy, the AI systems. They give us wrong information or even harmful consequences for us because of these hallucinations. So when an example of this hallucination, and when the AI system creates sentient machines, when they receive a prompt, chatbot analyze the patterns to predict what a human would be most likely to say in that situation. So their responses are financed by human engineers, but the end result is a realistic simulation of human conversation. But the main difference between chatbots and autocomplete is that ChatGPT will write longer sentences. But even with these powers, chatbots are far, far away, like the professor yesterday, the Jamaican professor said at this conference, from the human brain, which is always, I think, and I hope will always be the best. Thank you very much.
Congratulations for the most charming, beautiful lecture. Scary in a way, very scary. And we see that the rights of AI, it protects the rights of women, human.
Exactly.
So we protect us. And I didn't catch when you talk. Did you talk about deep fake?
We didn't speak about deep fake because the presentation was a bit long, but deep fakes are exactly the same as the concerns are exactly the same as we mentioned before about facial recognition, because deep fakes are alteration of the face based on AI systems. So
And the voice.
basically,
And
you
the
have a
voice as
photo,
well.
you cut a photo, you put an actor photo, and you are that guy immediately. So this is crazy.
I am so happy my face is asymmetrical because deep fake is difficult to
Oh,
do.
they can do it
It's
even with
completely
your
another
face.
way.
Nobody is free from that, I'm sure. I'm
Oh
sorry.
my God. Oh my God. So do you think we are in trouble? Like, do you think lots of crimes would happen because of this AI stuff?
I think everybody is subject to this risk. Now, the problem is whether the legislation in Europe is more difficult, in the US is easier. That's the difference.
The legislation is easier.
In the US, yes, because there are no law enforcement rules, while in Europe there are some specific rules and penalties even.
Oh. But now the world is international and the internet and everything can come from anywhere. Doesn't matter
Yeah,
anymore.
but if I am an American company that does what I do in the US, or a Chinese company that does what she does in the US, in Europe, they get penalized, they get penalties, money. They have to pay money to Europe, or they can even be banned. While in their own countries, they can do whatever they want without penalization. That's the difference.
Ah. It's good to have some rules, isn't it? It's good to be
Yeah,
strict about protecting people, protecting
exactly,
people
exactly.
from what do you think, Tony?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to go too far into this now because it's not the topic of my presentation. But to be honest, I already said that before. I've been in this online compliance and offshore banking world since 2001, and if I'm in the practice, and I've been responsible for implementing all these kind of legislations, US, European, in practice. And to be honest, I mean, we learned one thing is that you can't regulate the internet. And I'm going to give you a very practical example. You were talking about American companies. If you have an American company in Delaware, there's no way that you're going to find the persons. And if people are offshoring their data sets or their applications, I use 80 AI-powered apps. They're all worldwide in the cloud, and you cannot find anywhere where anything is. So what my personal opinion is that you have to look at all this kind of legislation from practice, yeah, and not from theoretical stuff. I was separation manager for the whole of ABN AMRO in 2008 to in KYC and compliance, yeah, and we had to look at all offshore entities, private companies, legal entities, and we just couldn't find anything. Yeah, so I think it's really important not to say to people that things can be done that in practice cannot be done. Yeah, we chased Al Qaeda money after 2001. I had a lot of travels all over the world, a lot of sunshine, and we couldn't find anything. Yeah, so I think that's my opinion. So it's practice. I've been both sides. I'm a professor also, but I looked at if something is actually applicable or not. Yeah. And for the rest, I'm fine, with what people are saying. I just think that it's not, it's not applicable. And so, yeah, why are we doing it?
Well, there are always rules, but then, of course, if you violate the rules, you are subject to being penalized. But then it's up to the authorities to apply the rules, not to us as persons.
Yeah, but the thing is that I just give you the little examples from after 2001. Most of the AI stuff nowadays, just like IT in general, by the way, is offshored. Yeah, and it's in virtual networks online. So the thing is, we're never, it's not me because I'm married to a judge, so I'm fine. But I mean, it depends on your own ethics. And neither the European Union nor the local legislators nor the local national banks have the capacity nor the resources to actually do this. Yeah, so that's the only thing I'm saying. So I respect what you're saying, but I look at the practice since 2001, you know, so that's all.
Well, that's okay. I prefer rules, but it doesn't matter then. In the end, what the practical application is more important, yeah, of course.
Well, but I think in life it's like with everything is that, AI is technology, yeah, and it's about who is using it and for what, yeah. And for me, that's why also ethics is something personal, yeah. It's just like fake news or the things that you were said, most of the things that I read in newspapers or look at, watch on television or hear on the radio is fake news.
Yeah,
it's not correct. Yes.
That's more philosophical question, I would say.
It's practice, and then the last one, but I don't want to. Yeah, everybody's talking about the face changing stuff. Yeah, we had these apps online 2 years ago. Yeah, and people were already doing it with Adobe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, it's again, I'm a practical person, so I'm the practical scientist.
The UK guy, it's normal to be practical.
Thank you.
I would like Dr. Ross here. I'd like to speak to that point, and I believe that the answer lies in between exactly what both of you guys are saying. There is theory, but then there's actual practice, right? And most times we notice that when you put the theories into practice, it never goes exactly the way you imagine. And we learn a lot from real case scenarios, right? That's where most of the real answers come from on how to fix the system. So we have to put things into play. And I say that to say, everything you spoke about as a research scientist, that's a very touchy subject, right? Because you think about all these things, facial recognition, emotions, and things like that. Well, we have devices that can detect these things, can detect brainwaves, state of mind that can help even predict and prevent seizures, right?
Yeah.
Without the ability to research and to do that, these things will never get into the actual practice and improve quality of life. So if we stay scared and regulating everything, we're going to miss out on a lot. So we can't fearmonger, but at the same time, as the things come into play, we have to have a better system on how to enact almost like a Bayesian experiment, how to enact the changes and the results that we get in more real time. That's what we should be focused on. How, when we learn something in the system, can we enact what we have learned into the system, and it doesn't take 2 years, right? Because the same problem is happening in practice, in education, in finances, and health, across the board. We figure out something tomorrow, and it takes a year and a half to even come to consensus, and then we have to decide what we're going to do about it, and then we have to put it into play. How many things have changed since we acknowledge the problem? So thank you. That was my comment.
Okay, can I make just one small comment? And I think it's really relevant what you're saying, because you're saying we, yeah. And one of the reasons why I quit the corporate world and the world of traditional universities is that I already found out in 2001 that the changes and the innovations online worldwide are going much quicker than corporate dinosaur regulators and watchers are actually seeing it now. So I'm talking about the death of the dinosaurs. It's not something which is new. It's something that came up in change management, like already in 2001. Yeah. And so what I'm trying to do in what I'm doing is saying, okay, we're all in our online comfort zone, but if you look at the web in general, yeah, then things are going much quicker and much faster. So prepare for that. And then going to the topic that Dana has at heart, I think that we have to teach our children the reality of life. and and not teach them things that are irrelevant already today. Yeah, it's so that's my mission, to say, okay, we all together online are much quicker and much faster than people in traditional environments.
I fully agree on that, and in fact, I do exactly that.
Yeah, but that's true, and then so I think that it is our job as real experts to say to people what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that our politicians, or whoever is involved, don't do it in time. Yeah, that's something out of my circle of influence. I vote once every 4 years, and then afterwards, it's up to them.
That's true.
Can I quickly say to Tony, what you just said is very important, right? We have to talk to them, especially the children. I want everyone to think about kids now. They're growing up in a digital world. They're being born in a digital world.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
what we have to realize, because we've uncovered that full immersive learning, the brain is adapting and we're discovering new complex ways of learning, right? And now new ways of teaching and giving information from reception to perception. And it's fascinating stuff. These kids are growing up in that world and we have to adapt, right? Because we grew up in the older world. And if we're trying to teach them from a world that is developing, right? So we have to, in our own mind, think forward and be able to adapt in our teaching for that. And the important point I wanted to make was kids are very smart. They see what's happening. If our words aren't matching their experience, that's where we're losing the youth, because we're telling them stuff that's not matching. We're saying, you can't do X, Y, and Z. They jump on the dark web and they can do X, Y, and Z. They're not going to listen to you anymore. That's where we're losing the kids at.
And that's really, I think it's really interesting what you're saying, because I'm teaching in higher education already for 20 years. Yeah. And my students, and I'm helping them to start a company that actually doesn't go bankrupt. Yeah. And my students are telling me that their traditional professors, what they're telling them and what they're teaching them is irrelevant in their world. Yeah. So I avoid conflicts. So what I try to do is, tell these people that, how it works in general, and I can't do more, I mean, it's that's the way it is. So my thesis is that we are actually not teaching them, relevant things, but we call that in knowledge management false expertise. Yeah. And following up false expertise in any case makes huge damages, also economically. And we already know that since 1985. So, but I can't do more about that. We can do together with the people that want to do is say, okay, we have to teach the children things that help them in the world of today, not of the world 10 years ago. That's my personal opinion.
And also, if I can add just one little thing, I do. I have a non-profit organization. I go to schools and explain these issues to youngsters and explain specifically, and their questions are much smarter than ours. If I can add that.
Yes, I think I would probably agree more with Dr. Gates a little bit, finding a middle ground, because you can't have innovation if it's heavily regulated. But at the same time, too, you have precedents. If you realize that something is leading to it, that is what the government is for. That's what legislation. There always has to be a first. So if someone doesn't, so when it comes to basically looking at trying to enforce law, they draw reference. Does the entity maybe perhaps have an entity in that country? Then that country can actually file a lawsuit if that has a breach of ethics in some regards. So there are precedents in place that could probably establish these things. But again, you have to find a middle ground, because you can't have innovation if it's heavily regulated. Because from personal experience, when I wanted to explore LNCAP cells, for instance, processing, I actually have to deal with the with mice. So I actually have to follow certain rules and certain guides. And those are in place for a reason, so that you don't breach certain ethical concerns. But middle ground, I think we have to have a middle ground. But there are things, because if it is that we don't regulate it, you're going to run a problem of people just doing what they want at the same time.
I have a more practical question because I'm on now. Is it a good idea to start that we go on with the discussion after that? Is it okay?
Yes, sure.
I have to run away, and I thank you very much for inviting me. It was a great pleasure to meet all of you online, and I look forward to meeting you again. It was a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, let's connect on LinkedIn if you want. Anyway, let's do it.
Thank you,
Sure.
Prof. Sir. That's a great presentation.
Thank you.